Welcome, everybody. This is Tim Watrous, President of Digital Advisors.
And this is Kevin Gordon, President of Capital Advisors Group.
We'd like to welcome you to our K-12 Politics and Tech video series.
Our objective is to give you the absolute latest of what's going on in Sacramento that affects public school districts, obviously, and as well as all the technology stuff that's going on that's so vital to delivering for kids these days.
And remember, if you find these videos useful, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and share out over social media. You're our marketing team. We appreciate your support, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, everybody. Glad to be back here for another week of K-12 Politics and Tech. And this week we actually have a very special guest with us, Andrea Bennett, the Executive Director of CITE. Andrea, glad you're here.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and Kevin, let's get started this week by talking about the stimulus. It looks like at this point we're out of hope for this for the stimulus, at least before the election. But could you fill us in on some of the happenings and I guess some of the proposals that are out there right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of news being made, mostly on one side, which is, and I think it's mostly the White House trying to put out information, including, by the way, from the U.S. Department of Education, noises about the potentially of some standalone packages. Now, we've heard different sectors of the administration talk about that. Over the White House, they've talked about doing something that might help out the airlines, specifically standalone package for that. There's been talk about something that deals with unemployment. And then one of the high-ranking folks, Assistant Secretary Jim Blue at U.S. Department of Education, had suggested that there might actually be a standalone package that would address K-12. The problem is that I don't see congressional Democrats going along with splitting that up because it parcels out sort of the political benefit or leverage that they need to get an entire package through. So I think it's pretty much one-sided, but it's making a little bit of news. I don't think we're going to get anything now before the election, but we'll see. So then the question is, what happens post-election depending on which candidate ends up prevailing? Obviously, President Trump, if he were to lose, would still be lame duck and could do something post-election. I'm not so sure that he's going to be interested in negotiating with anybody if he ends up losing that election. We'll see. But it is a fact that, President Trump, I mean, if he really wanted something and the Democrats wanted something as well, they'll be in a better position to probably negotiate that. And it's just a matter of whether or not the president wants to go along, if he wants, from a legacy standpoint, to address some of these additional things before he were to leave. But he has stated that he's in favor of different components of the deal. Amongst them has been this rather large amount for education. There are other issues that he's got trouble with that are mostly focused on bailing out state and local governments. But this number has just gotten so big for education compared to where we started, $70 billion in the HEROES Act to $175 billion that we see in this smaller package that Speaker Pelosi did put together and is pitching. And it's not one of the areas that the administration's been complaining about. That is the education piece. The other thing that's in this Pelosi sort of narrowed down package, it's $1.2 billion smaller than the original HEROES Act, is $12 billion that would be just for ed tech that would run through E-rate. So I figured that probably got your attention for sure. But the other thing is I was going to mention is that in the event that Biden does win, he is going to certainly want to do a major stimulus package. The question is whether or not the Democrats get the U.S. Senate, because if they don't, we're going to have the same kind of gridlock that I think we had for so long in the Obama administration, where Senate Republicans don't have a whole lot of motivation to give the Democrat president any successes. And so hopefully the politics don't break down like that. But I think there's that possibility. So our optimism that if in any case either candidate wins, that we might see some stimulus post-election is dimmed a little bit in the case of Biden being able to get one if he does not end up getting a majority, more majority of those seats picked up in the Senate that are at stake and wins over the U.S. Senate. Because there's always, even if the Democrats do take the U.S. Senate, you got to remember they've got this 60 vote threshold before they can really do anything meaningful, and Republicans will still try to block that. So, you're going to have some partisan gridlock in any case. But the one thing we know for sure, we're not looking at a package probably before the election.
Thanks, Kevin. And I guess there's so much riding on this election. It's a shame that we didn't get stimulus through before the election, and maybe there's some sort of oddball hope that we'll see something for education before then. But I guess at this point, I'm becoming more and more skeptical, and hopefully we'll see something get done before the turn of the new year. I mean, at this point, right? Because we got the holidays looming after the election, dust settling, and those sorts of things. So we'll keep our fingers crossed as always and keep everybody updated as we learn more.
It is
And,
important. It is important to note that the governor's budget was predicated on the hope that we would be able to get some stimulus so he could back off some of the cuts, including more than half of all the deferrals that we have in education. So, but one of the things to note is that obviously, if we get anything during the course of this current school year, this current fiscal year, that would still be doable in terms of aiding, overall school finance. The picture gets really grim and really, really serious for California if we don't end up having any kind of stimulus, for the rest of this current fiscal year. That's a major problem. So I'm still kind of optimistic that at some point maybe we will get it, and if we get it during this fiscal year, we'll obviously be in much better shape.
well, you mentioned something important in there, Kevin, which was the $12 billion proposal for updating E-rate, or let's say modifying E-rate to support distance learning. And I think that's the key piece that we're missing right now. I mean, while the dollars may arrive this year to offset some of the losses that we would take with the economy's missing, the need for dollars to support distance learning was 3 or 4 months ago, right? And people have been spending their budget because they have to be able to connect with kids for the accountability reasons, and just to be able to educate students. So I think that's the dollar. Those are the dollars that we need to see ASAP. And if they pull anything out and fund it right away, I would hope we'd at least see something there. So Andrea, let's switch gears over to that topic and just pick your brain on this a little bit. We went from let's see, Shelby and Funds for Learning, they were back in DC asking for $7 billion to solve the problem. Basically, they were asked by the FCC to remove cybersecurity. Then it sort of got ratcheted down to $4 billion. Now we're all the way up to $12 billion, which seems like a much more reasonable number to solve such a large problem. But there's a lot of gotchas behind that. Even if we do get 12 billion, could as far as what leaders need to be thinking about with this type of funding, what are some of the challenges or opportunities that you see there?
Right. Yeah. 12 billion sounds great, but it's wrapped into the E-rate program, right? So E-rate program as it stands is not, you can't use it for devices, and you can't use it for access off the school grounds, off the school sites. What's in this bill currently is to change E-rate so that dollars can be, part of this dollars can be used for devices, including laptops and Chromebooks and things like that, but also hotspots and modems and routers and things like that, and access to the home, which sounds wonderful, right? I mean, E-rate is a great program. It's the way that most schools are getting connected. But when you start taking access from just the school grounds to the home, you're also taking responsibility for that access. And that may mean that you need more staff, or you need more equipment on the back end to help support that type of access. And these are one-time dollars. So, well, theoretically one-time dollars, right? So if it gets there and we do get the money, and now you're supporting access to the home, how are you going to maintain that access? How are you going to replace those devices once that money's gone? So that's what I think leaders should be really thinking about.
Well, those are great points, Andrea, and there's E-rate has been, I guess, notorious for having a lot of red tape to get in to the program, and then really importantly on the accountability side, right? Where are the devices? What are you doing with those devices? And you really need to be able to answer those questions. For those of you leaders who are not familiar with this program, I mean, this has basically been able to provide you with internet connectivity at your sites, as Andrea mentioned, and basically the infrastructure to provide access within your site. Once we step outside of the walls, if they have I guess a similar level of accountability expectations, we're all going to be in a little bit of trouble because we have a hard time controlling what's happening at home. And I feel like there's going to be a little bit, or maybe a lot of adjustments that need to be made on the accountability side, because certainly school districts and tech departments and in general are not built to support this distributed infrastructure, if you will. So we'll hope to see the dollars, but maybe a little bit less of that red tape and auditing scare that you would have if this were the old style of E-rate. So let me just ask also, just thinking about distance learning guidance, Kevin, switching kind of back over to you since we're on this topic about distance learning. Can you talk about some of the new guidance that we're seeing from the state, particularly the learning logs, which we've been talking about on the broadcast?
Yeah, really what we were waiting for, which did come out late last week, some guidance by the California Department of Education, which was much anticipated, in response to a lot of sort of consternation over the template that we'd originally gotten from CDE that was supposed to be used for these purposes. And what CDE did sort of promise and they delivered on after engaging a lot of stakeholders was a guide that walks through more guidance, but in addition, it outlines some of the alternatives to the CDE template, which I think are generally thought to be helpful. One of the major concerns that people had was that that to the extent that things seemed really pretty prescriptive and really geared toward an individual sort of set of entries for each and every kid, when we clearly have cohorts, we have assignments and other things that are by cohort. Wouldn't there be a way to sort of blend that? The other issue was there's some innovation going on by our SIS providers that seemingly would be appropriate alternatives potentially. And CDE wrapped all of that together and put that out in some guidance that I think will be viewed now by the field as being very helpful. So we kind of closed on that one. And, there are other issues that obviously we're still in the middle of working through, but at least that one, the department has put out that guidance and we've got a little more clarity on that.
Well, was on a call with the superintendent this week, and they were reporting that they had somewhere around 90% connectivity to their student population, which sounded amazing based on all the challenges that people are facing today. He had been on the call with another superintendent friend earlier in the day, and they were somewhere in the 70s. So I think the challenges that folks are facing when it comes to attendance and being able to log those interactions, I think we're just scratching the surface of this story, and I feel like this one's going to continue to evolve as we adapt to this distance learning world that we're in. So thanks for giving us the update there, Kevin, and we'll keep everyone updated as we learn more on that topic. So speaking of this theme of connecting to homes, Andrea, we were discussing an article that was out this week about AT&T killing DSL in rural areas. Sort of a head scratcher, but I'd love to get your feedback or your opinion on that when you see a story like that come out.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, shame on them for doing that right now, because we need as much connection as we can get. The reason they're doing it is financial. It's because the technology is aging, and that's what the school leaders should be thinking about is aging technology. Again, it costs more as that technology ages to support it, and eventually it won't be supported at all, and that creates cybersecurity issues as well. I think that if there were more competition for these companies, they would have to figure out how to get into rural areas and figure out how to better serve urban areas that are underserved. I don't know what the answer is, except I just think they need more competition, and I think they need to think a little bit more about children and what's happening with children right now, and put the politics aside and put the finances aside and see what they can do to make things work.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more, Andrea. And you made a great call out about aging systems. Aging. You could have aging devices in your network that are causing problems. And on the cybersecurity front, everyone, that's a big risk,
Yeah.
right? So if you have an old device that has zero security, it's just been in your network for a long time, and you're not aware, that's an entry point for one of these ransomware attacks. Those sorts of malicious behavior from hackers that we've seen every week and we talk about on this show. So I think that's a great thing to call out. I want to also echo the fact that the timing of killing internet connectivity in the time of the pandemic is like, it's just mind-boggling that they would choose now to do that. And I want to remind everyone, we talked when CARES came out, 16 billion went to building out a 5G network to support rural America. And that was the headline from the FCC. We're not even going to see any of that work begin or any of that connectivity for years. So what we've seen is, the FCC not really support the help that we need now to connect to kids. And we've seen the service providers who receive that $16 billion behave in ways that are not necessarily as supportive as we'd like. Now, in some cases, they're giving out hotspots or discounts, and then here's a large number of people that are now without internet. So it is hard to believe, and I'm glad you brought up those points. So thanks for sharing that. Since we're talking a little bit about the FCC, Andrea, there was a big push for net neutrality before, and anyone who's not really familiar with this issue, there are companies out there that would throttle your internet service, and that can cause all sorts of issues. They might throttle it because you're using a particular type of application or you're in a particular area. And the spirit of this law that was passed was, hey, you just get access, the same access anywhere, anytime. And forgive me if I'm oversimplifying. But what we just saw was an overturn of that rule, and the FCC comes out and supports it immediately. And Andrea, I guess maybe just give us your 2 cents on this. I believe this is a really big issue, and it's kind of under the radar right now, but it's so important for us, especially in this world that we're in, where we're all relying on connectivity to get our jobs done and learn. So maybe just fill us in on what your thoughts are on this topic.
Yeah, it's just horrible. Again, it's about finances, it's about dollars and making money. And your assessment was right. The provider can decide, if you're a school and you need a certain amount of bandwidth, or whatever services they're providing, they can decide the price, and they can decide how much you get and how much you don't get. And if you are using a competitor's software or a competitor's application that they don't like because it uses too much bandwidth, they'll just kill it. This is horrible for education. Education needs to have, from kindergarten, TK, all the way up to higher ed. They need to have the access be stable and strong enough so that they can learn. So yeah, we'll be having a huge call to action depending on how the election goes, and how the FCC kind of takes shape after that, or stays the same. We may have to go right back to the, advocating for all of that from square one, which is really a shame. It's very, very upsetting.
Well, I want to say thanks for all the work you've done, you and your association have done to sort of fight the good fight on this. And as you said, you may have to pick up the battle again as the dust settles on these decisions. But I think it is also interesting that big tech is being called to DC and sort of put on the hot seat, if you will, about monopolies and anti-competitive behavior. And then here is something that the FCC is backing that really kind of supports that. So I don't know how those two mixed messages go, how they don't necessarily cancel each other out, but it just seems like very odd behavior to me. And with that, I guess, Kevin, we had talked about the fall bond sale, state allocation board. There's a little bit of news there this week. Can you share that with us, like some of the implications there for districts?
Yeah, I mean, just wanted to make sure people were aware of what happened with regard to the bond sale that happened the first week of September. And then what OPSC, the Office of Public School Construction, reported to the SAB of the prep out of appropriations that are darn near $1 billion that will go to the October 28th meeting that SAB will have next month. So we are going to have some money moving around on facilities, and that's always good news.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Kevin. And yeah, it's there. Believe it or not, there are school bonds, local school bonds that are up for election this November for the districts that need that. Maybe didn't get them passed last time. We wish you well, and thanks for bringing that up as far as the state sale goes. One other thing I wanted to mention here, actually, before we go, is CITE's annual conference is coming up. I want to say November 16th, Andrea, if that's not correct. In the past, I think CITE was looked at as an organization that only had tech stuff, and of course, that's the core of what you do. Can you talk a little bit about the conference? What a leader, what a CBO, a superintendent might receive if they come, the type of content that's available for them.
Right, sure. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, November 16th through the 20th. It is, of course, virtual. And the format is we're having the sessions in the morning, general sessions at noon, and then what we call our showdowns in the afternoon, which are multiple vendors presenting at the same time in the same session. And the keynote is Jason Silva. So if you're a fan of brain games and futuristic theology, then you'll like Jason Silva. We also have some data workshops with Stephanie Evergreen, and she is Dr. Evergreen talks about how to tell a story with your data, and she's getting some real world examples of schools data, California schools data, and she's going to show the difference between how maybe this person put this report together and how she would put the report together. And I think school leaders would be really interested in seeing that. We also have a session called Utilizing Data Dashboards, EdTech Interventions and Monitoring Student Success Across Distance Learning Modes. And that's with Jeremy Davis of Fullerton. Keith Kruger from COSN. The COSN is a national organization. He's coming in to talk about some lessons learned about distance learning. And then powerful tools for teaching. So there's several sessions like that would appeal to school leaders. And then, of course, if you are interested in technology, there's lots of labs and other sessions that talk about E-rate and things like that if you want to learn more about that. And one registration covers everything. So there's an expo hall with 100 vendors that you can go in and check out too.
Well, thanks, Andrea. And I'll just say, everyone, if you haven't been to a tech conference before, this is the premier event in California. And you, as a leader, doesn't matter what department you're in, facilities, curriculum, you name it, HR, you are relying more on tech every day to run your departments. So please invest a little bit of time in this wonderful organization, in this event that happens once a year, to really kind of just like raise your IQ around some of these tech topics. A lot we talk about on the broadcast, but they're going to get into so much more depth in that conference. So we encourage you and your teams to attend. And with that, I want to say, Kevin, any final thoughts before we wrap up this week?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about, Tim, is that, and we've really never mentioned it on the broadcast, but just for the sake of doing a little commercial, is that people need to know that, Tim, you are available to school districts also to be a consultant on some of these issues. So try to supplement the talent that you guys have in districts, or to be consultative in terms of advice to superintendents or the boards, or any kind of role that you guys have in figuring some of this stuff out. You've got so many vendors coming at you with different kinds of solutions, and you're actually trying to find those solutions. You're open to looking toward those solutions that you need. CITE and Tim and the work that's been done by entities that are not, associated with one vendor or another can be really, really helpful right now, particularly given the fact that we're entering essentially the last 90 days of that really intense spending period for the federal dollars that we've gotten, that a good significant amount of it is going to end up being utilized for distance learning and making those systems work. So that's my last sort of parting thought.
Kevin, I owe you a Starbucks card. Thank you. Yeah. And Andrea, and any final thoughts from you as we wrap up?
Thanks for having me today. I love these little talks, and hopefully I'll come back soon.
All right. Well, yeah. Thank you so much, Andrea, for joining. Thanks, CITE community, for supporting us. And we look forward to catching you again soon, Andrea. Good luck with the conference. And thank you, Kevin. We'll talk next week.
Yep, we'll be in touch.
All right.
So thanks again for joining us for another week of this broadcast.
And I just want to take a moment to remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel and share this out over social media. Again, you're our marketing team. I'll also finish by saying if you have some questions, please send them our way. We'd be happy to address them on a future broadcast. So with that, thanks everybody, and we'll talk soon.